This is exactly who to stash on your bench to guarantee yourself success later down the line of the fantasy football season and even in this next week coming up, that are not the basic guys that everybody talks about and is already rostered in 100% of your leagues. If you do appreciate that fact and you want to get these stash videos every single week, make sure to subscribe if you are new. We're reaching a ton of new people, or hit that like button to gain your statistical knowledge of fantasy football. But make sure to stick around to the end of the video because I will be going over a few defenses that have great matchups in week 12, 13, even 14 and 15 that we can stash to guarantee ourselves some success in 20 plus point fantasy weeks coming forward to beat everybody else off the waivers, because we know how insane that can get. We're going to be early. Number one, the first stash of the week is going to be Taysom Hill. He is coming into his bye week this week, so he will be a little bit more available, but he did have a monster game, over 40 fantasy points last week, and he is going to be rostered in a ton of leagues. So if he's not out there for you, I do understand, but if you look at his numbers, he had 7 rushing attempts, 138 yards, 3 touchdowns, 8 receptions, 10 targets, 50 yards, some passing attempts mixed in there. He literally did everything for this offense. With no Olave, his usage goes way up, and even when he does come back in a matter of weeks, Derek Carr still isn't the best quarterback in the world, so they can utilize Taysom Hill in that passing game to take the pressure off Derek Carr to make those plays and make those throws. But a really amazing point here is that Mason Tipton is a healthy scratch. Coach's decision last week, he did not get a snap. There's a lot more opportunity here for him to get more touches, more yardage, more everything, because he gets used in every single aspect of the offense, and he can be put in your tight end slot, which is also good. He has the 8th easiest rest of season schedule for the tight end position, so that is always a plus. Not like he plays tight end position all the time, but he has some pretty good matchups coming up. Next up, for another stash, we will be talking about Theo Johnson. I will continue to talk about this guy regardless of what the Giants are going through at quarterback on offense. I don't care. This guy had a season high in route participation last week, as well as a 92% snap share, leading to 4 receptions on 6 targets for 37 yards, putting up 7.7 fantasy points. Now, that's nothing crazy, nothing like a Taysom Hill kind of guy, but when we look at the tight end position, there's really not that much you can look for as far as upside goes and people you can actually trust. He's had 12 targets in 2 weeks and 88 yards combined. Those are some good numbers. With Andrew Thomas out for this offense, Daniel Jones has pretty much just not been able to pass downfield. He's not great on his own at doing it, but now when he has less time in the pocket to pass, his yards per pass attempt is extremely lower, and it just makes sense. If you can't let your deep routes develop downfield, you're going to have to keep it short, close to the line of scrimmage, which is why guys like Tyron Tracy have been top 10 in running back route participation every week to get that check down game going and alleviate the pressure coming from the defense, as well as Wan'Dale Robinson, a slot guy that has a really low ADOT, but also gets a ton of fantasy points. But Theo Johnson has already been doing that. He started the first week of his rookie career playing over 80% of the snaps. He's been averaging over 85 for the rest of the entire season, which is actually really impressive at the tight end position. He's the tight end 9 in routes run per game and route participation, but the tight end 34 on the year in total fantasy points. So eventually those numbers are going to consolidate and come towards the mean, come towards the middle, because if you're running that many routes, you're bound to get the ball. And he does have an insanely positive rest of season schedule, getting the Buccaneers this week, which we know they can't stop a lot of yardage, followed by the Cowboys, Saints, and Ravens. Some insanely positive matchups, but if he's not available for you, or you just don't trust the Giants offense and don't like him, Jatavion Sanders can be another tight end for you, especially now that the Panthers are actually putting it together and scoring a little bit of points. They're averaging 20 total points scored over the last 3 weeks. Bryce Young can actually be a quarterback now at this point. He's averaging 9 fantasy points over the last 5 weeks and has solidified himself as the tight end 1 for this offense, playing over 85% of the snaps in both of the last 2 weeks. Now, we could get Tommy Tremble coming back from injury this week or the next, which is probably going to lower his snap percentage just a little bit, but he's still leading this tight end room in routes run per game. He's been a top tight end in PFF grade over those last 2 weeks, and he gets an extremely positive matchup here against the Chiefs. They're tough in everything except points allowed to the tight end position. We've seen it week after week. They're just now coming off their bye week, and we've seen time and time again rookies statistically always increase their snaps or their usage or their volume in general after their bye week. Regardless of what the position they play is, they always get used after that bye week, and his has already passed. So now is a good time to stash him before an inevitable breakout ends up happening later down the line of the season. But if you're looking for running backs, Trey Benson is going to be that guy for you, and our first option outside of the top general handcuffs like the Tyler Algiers or like the Braylon Allens. But what's really been great about Benson is nobody's really been talking about him over the last 2 weeks against really tough run defenses against the Bears and the Jets. He managed to put up 12.5 and 10.7 fantasy points in those 2 games respectively, coming off 27% of the snaps and 28% of the snaps. If you look at his game log here, he's done pretty good in that and got some receiving usage as well, which those splits are going to be positive for him. Now, all of a sudden, is he just going to continue to average 10 fantasy points a game and be the starable running back for us? No, it's not very likely, but he can most definitely be a viable handcuff, and he has some really good running back matchups moving forward against the Seahawks twice, the Patriots, and the Panthers in the next 4 out of 5 games that he does play. At this point in the fantasy football season, we want to be rostering and stashing our handcuff running backs to ensure success even if our starter goes down. If you don't have James Conner, he can still be a viable guy, but if James Conner, the RB15 on the year, and a running back that's never once played a full season in 6.5 years, somehow gets injured and misses a couple games, Trey Benson could literally win leagues. Not to mention, he's been extremely efficient in the touches that he has seen. Granted, it hasn't been a ton, but he's averaging over 5 yards per carry in those contests. We've seen time and time again rookies get involved and increase snaps, especially at the running back position after the bye week. He's coming off his. There's a real chance that he continues to see usage alongside James Conner and also the RB1 if he were to get injured. But if you need some more running backs, you don't want Trey Benson or he's not available, go get Cam Akers. He is next in line here. It is clear that he is the number 2 running back behind Aaron Jones. At this point, he might not even be behind him because we've had Aaron Jones dealing with a little bit of injury. Last week, Cam Akers saw 11.6 fantasy points on 31% of the snaps. Now, a good amount of his success is probably coming from the Aaron Jones injury that he faced in week 10 when he was carted off the field. Akers in that game saw 100% of the running back touches. Now, he might not be super efficient, but if Aaron Jones goes out and we see exactly what to expect later down the line of the season, if that happens again with 100% of the running back touches, Ty Chandler is not in this offense at all. That really does give us a lot of confidence in being able to add him for a league-winning position later down the line of the season. But outside of the Aaron Jones injury that we can't play fantasy football based on and we can't expect to happen, his usage has been improving. Last week he saw 10 carries compared to Aaron Jones at 15, but 13 routes run compared to Aaron Jones with 14 out of the backfield. He is a top-tier handcuff that gets usage in the receiving game. He's been a top guy on other offenses before. This squad is 11th in rushing attempts on the year. The opportunities will definitely be there. And they have a pretty positive next few matchups here against the Bears, Cardinals, Falcons, and Bears again. They have tough pass defenses, but their run defense is pretty easy. But if you're looking for a tight end here, you want one. A lot of tight ends are out there that are not consistent. Will Dissly is going to be that option for you, and he has really been under the radar for the Chargers here. He's averaged 10.1 fantasy points a game and 6.5 targets since their bye week in week 5. That was over a month ago, over 5 games ago. But he also has 6 targets in the last 4 out of 5 games that he has played, and Hayden Hurst, for the first time last week, was a healthy scratch. That is huge in the Dissly tight end 1 era that we're about to enter here. He is the tight end 5 in targets, the tight end 4 in receptions, and the tight end 2 in yards per route run over those last 5 weeks. Like, all of these numbers are positive here. With the way Justin Herbert has been playing and the way the Chargers have been passing, it's going to drastically increase the opportunity and upside for all of these receiving options, let alone Will Dissly. If you look at the numbers, the Chargers started off averaging 22 pass attempts a game, and over the last 5 weeks, again, that number has gone up all the way to 31.5. If there's almost 10 more targets being put out into this offense, they have to go somewhere. You can expect Will Dissly to increase his snap share and target share because of that, especially if we have Hayden Hurst, the only other tight end, not getting a single snap. Not to mention, he has one of the easiest rest of season schedules for tight ends, getting the Ravens this week, which we all know how extremely positive that is and friendly to overall yardage, followed by the Falcons, the Chiefs, Buccaneers, Broncos, and Patriots to finish out the fantasy football season. All pass first, very easy matchups that we can start him in. But if you need a quarterback here, Drake May is going to be that option. In the games that he has been fully healthy and played the whole game, he's averaging 18.4 fantasy points in those contests, and the QB9 behind Jaden Daniels, still barely rostered in fantasy football leagues right now. He does get tougher matchups, which is probably why his roster percentage is lower. His rest of the year schedule is one of the hardest for quarterbacks, but he's been the QB5 in rush yards, averaging 9.3 yards per carry this season. That gives him a ton of upside and a big floor that we can really expect and keep him safe, especially when you get these tougher matchups that he does get. I mean, the Dolphins this week, it's a startable matchup for him, but not insanely positive. After that, he gets the Colts. That's very positive, and then the rest after his week 14 bye is just not necessarily amazing. But if you're looking for some defenses that you can go through and stash ahead of your league mates that have a good matchup this week, but also week 13, week 14, the Chiefs are going to be your number 1 option here. A lot of people are dropping them because of how bad they've been recently. Over the last 3 weeks, they were averaging 2.5 fantasy points a game. They are still the Chiefs, though, and they get some really good matchups, so they might still be rostered in a good amount of leagues, but they get some really positive matchups here, again, against the Panthers this week, followed by the Raiders, Chargers, and Browns. But if you can't get them, they're rostered in too many leagues. The Buccaneers are going to be another option for you. They, again, get very positive matchups, arguably better than the Chiefs do, against the Giants, Panthers, Raiders, Chargers, Cowboys, Panthers again to finish off their fantasy season. Like, that is insanely positive. It's a bit more risky. They are only averaging 6 fantasy points a game, and they're allowing a ton of offense to opposing teams, a decent amount of takeaways, but they're not necessarily a lockdown defense, regardless of if they have a defensive-minded head coach already, but they've had some pretty tough matchups so far this year, so you can't really take that away from them, especially getting really good ones next up. But some other options, if you can't get them or don't want them, the Commanders and the Cardinals are both options. They have very positive matchups, but are a little bit more risky because of who they are and their defensive focus themselves. But that's going to finish off this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. All glory to the man above.